So, Women in Microwaves is a group that started to sort of allow women that were practicing in the field, both in academia and industry, to connect and communicate. And so it just became a venue to house and host some interactions and opportunities for networking with each other and with our colleagues in the field. Oh, I enjoyed it very much. It was really interesting discussions listening to the ladies on the panel, but also it was really nice to hear some of the comments that the people in the audience had to make and questions. I guess what I would focus on now, since people talked a lot about the challenges, I would prefer to talk maybe about a different perspective, which would be what can you do now to develop your own career? And so, one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is how do we empower women that are thinking about doing microwaves to develop their own career strategies so that they can have some template to work with that needs modification, of course. And so one of those things that I think is really important is to try to see when you come to events like this, who are the people that are talking about things that are important to you, and then making sure that you connect with them, even if it's just a brief hello, hi, my name is this, and I really enjoyed a point that you made. So to me, that initial connection and just stringing together those types of conversations are going to are like planting seeds for future interactions with them. I think that we can focus on the challenges, and God knows there are a lot, but everybody's cross is pretty heavy to them. So one of the things that I'm thinking now might be really helpful for the society, and particularly for young women thinking about joining it, is maybe not to spend too much time thinking about how bad it is or how hard it is, but to really think for themselves, if this were my world and everybody in it was doing exactly what I need, what would that look like? And I think to just come up with a way to craft a story that is in the fertile environment for you, and then take that story and look at this environment and start identifying the pieces that naturally fit. And then from there, you can think about where you're going to get the other components from if it doesn't exist in the society. There are many people, both male and female, who are very supportive. That's not to say that you're not going to have some difficulties, but one of the things that psychologists tell us is that, for every one negative, we need 9 positives. So it's kind of making me think that we have to be really, really careful and give due diligence to not dwelling on the negative. Well, I think that the foundation for doing engineering is math and science. So at least in the U.S., many people are at a disadvantage because that's the weakest skill set. But I think to me, and this is what I tell my daughter, it's really important to me that you have equivalent skills in your math and science that you would have in your reading and writing. I would never discourage you from learning to read and write because I know how important it is. And I'm not asking you to become a writer. I just want you to be able to do the things that require that skill set. But with the math and the science, what's equally important is that math is the grammar of science. And so what I would like is that everybody would be minimally educated in it, because you need people who can support us, which means they need to understand what we do, but we also need people who have the basic skills to be able to participate. And so for my daughter, I just tell her, look, I want you to be prepared to go in any direction, and to not let you have good math and science skills is basically cutting off your access point to many career opportunities. So I think that's just important to keep your options open. And of course, I'd love for you to be an engineer if that's what you find to be really exciting and interesting.
Yeah, I'm really glad that John mentioned 3MT. He did mention that 1/3 of our competitors were women. He also mentioned that 2 out of 3 of our top 3 contestants were women. So I thought that was a really encouraging thing as well. And he said that that this kind of competition, clear, brief, engaging communication, is really something that women excel at. And I think that he's hit on something right there. I think that generally in engineering fields, and I don't know whether you agree with this or whether you've shared this experience as well, but I think that generally the onus of clarity and communication tends to be on women in engineering. And this has something to do with imposter syndrome, and it has something to do with what Zoya Popovich was saying on the panel as well, that knowledge is power. Right? So very often when there's a woman engineer or a woman scientist communicating with a man, the onus of clarity is on her. If she said something that the man doesn't understand, there's not really the fear of asking questions. There's not really the fear of calling out. So it's really the woman's problem if there's a misunderstanding. I I think that that's what tends to happen. It's what we wish would happen less with all communication between any two individuals. But I think that because this happens to a large extent, women get practice in clear communication. And I think that out of these hardships comes the benefit of these communication skills that are highly transferable to industry as well. So this makes women engineers prime candidates for jobs in corporations, companies that need talented, intelligent spokespeople. Yeah, I liked the beginning of the panel when all of the panelists were talking about some of the things that keep them going in engineering. I already mentioned Zoya Popovich's comment, knowledge is power, right? She had said that the more knowledge you have, the funner your work becomes, and the more you're respected in your work. So if you can stick it out until you've got enough knowledge, what that threshold is, she didn't say, but if you can stick it out until you've got enough knowledge, then your work becomes a game. So I thought that was a particularly insightful comment, and that inspires you to work harder whether you're a man or a woman in engineering. I think this is applicable to both genders and to across the entire spectrum. So yeah, so I really enjoyed the panel.
So I get very involved in mergers and acquisitions in my company and evaluating the strategic fit and running all the financial models, and I just kind of learned by doing. But I'm like, I really should have more formal training, right, to boost my confidence. I'm actually taking a class at UCLA that's a formal M&A. So for me, I think that was my little bit of imposter, like, oh my gosh, what if they find out I'm not formally trained in M&A analysis? And so the gentleman who actually leads, I asked him a question based upon what I learned in class, and he didn't know the answer. So now I'm like, ooh. Yes, I think everybody has a little bit of imposter, but it's impossible to know everything about everything. I think what makes a good panel is if the questions are on target, but then the panelists really show that they're vulnerable and will share personal stories and become real people, right? Because you're going to pick a role model that reminds you of something about you, and we're all real people and multifaceted. So we had a really nice diversity of industry and academia, small company, large company, PhD, non-PhD, and we all added a little bit different perspective on the panel. So I think there's something for everybody if they want to tune in and watch it. Well, it's a great career path, actually. And I think it keeps getting better and better in terms of women not feeling like they're be alone if they pick an engineering major. I mean, there's so much information out on STEM now, the science, technology, engineering, and math, and computer science is growing. Biomedical is a huge field that's growing, and even the ladies that were speaking here today in another panel I sat in was talking about the humanitarian aspect of what we do and the problems we're solving. So I think that's going to help us keep women interested, and then, come talk to us, right? This is a great spotlight on there are women in our industry, and hopefully they're interesting women and we're approachable. So to me, I think it's about the role models, and we're trying to do that in a small way.
So there were some really insightful comments I thought that came from the audience. One was about how if you are chosen for a position and then someone later tells you, you were selected because you were a woman, how do you ever really know that is or isn't the case? Because we try so hard to be diverse, so we're having inclusion of, women and diversity of, all demographics, and then how do you know that you really are chosen based on your qualifications? And I think that is something that women are always faced with, because you are a woman and it is something that distinguishes you, and you just have to it's a confidence thing. I think that we have to be confident that, well, of course you should get it because you are qualified, and you wouldn't be there if you weren't qualified. But I can understand how it's a struggle. It's hard to, like, how do you know for sure it wasn't just because you're a woman? And maybe it's these additional, like I mentioned, like it's your dazzling personality traits in addition to all of your qualifications. But the point is that you got the job, right? And now you have to prove, and just do the work and excel at it, like of course you will, and not worry about it anymore. But I thought that was one of the really interesting comments that came up. To try something out, like maybe try an internship or go visit if it's graduate school you're concerned about or wondering, to go and get some personal experiences or try to meet some people who are in those fields. Sometimes schools have people come and, like I'll go to a school and give a talk about what it's like for me being a woman in engineering. I mean, you can get that kind of hands-on experience through conversations or going to places where a company might have a special event, and you can learn more about it and get information there. Yeah, I guess two things. One is to get an advocate, and not just a mentor, but really someone who would really advocate for you and can help you understand, give you some different perspective on things, and that's really helpful. And I guess the other thing would be when you're in a new position like that is to also really understand that you are unique and to just own it and be happy about it. Like, you want to be unique, you want to stand out. That's going to help you succeed and be differentiated. So to make it a positive.
So the important thing about the panel was not necessarily the topics that were on the panel, but the fact that there are contributions that are very high caliber technical contributions that women are making in the field, and not that that's is something unusual, but it is something that we wanted to highlight the fact that it's part of the everyday evolution of a company. We happen to focus on the women in defense industry. We could have focused on women in academia or women in whatever fields. But so the takeaway from my perspective is not necessarily the defense-focused specific topics, but more the fact that there are very many serious technical topics that we wanted to contribute to, and I've been part of Women in Engineering at Microwaves since for almost 15 years, and in the beginnings we focused more on just challenges of being a woman in a workplace and things like that, it's a very important topic to kind of discuss and make sure that everybody kind of is encouraging and supportive. But I thought it was also important to be seen as a serious group that does serious work. So I feel very optimistic about attracting more and more women into the field of engineering. And the impression that I had was I see tremendous confidence, and I see them more and more look like they belong there. And when I started going to MTT as a young student, we rarely saw female students in the microwave field, and we all used to wonder what we needed to do to start to be on the program committees and just kind of like be part of the group that not only contributes but actually directs the direction of the MTT society. And I see more and more over the years. I've seen a huge, I would say, an exponential growth in the number of women who are making very significant contributions, and they seem so strong and confident in what they're doing. So I feel really optimistic about that we're heading in the right direction. We need to do a whole lot more work to kind of match the demographic that our society, to reflect the demographic of our society. But I definitely feel positive that we have made huge strides, and we're continuing to make improvements.